You ever get that feeling, you want to start a new habit? Like, finally do that morning walk or maybe learn guitar.
Oh, absolutely.
And it just feels like, well, like you'd have to become a completely different person for it to actually stick.
Right. That exact feeling.
But what if that feeling itself, that urge to kind of protect who you think you are, is actually the main obstacle? It seems like it might be based on maybe a slight misunderstanding of how identity even works.
Exactly. The psychology, really, behind why we often resist change and struggle with those new habits.
Okay.
We'll be looking at some, well, pretty fascinating research on self-perception. Identity drawing from a study about these hypothetical enhancement pills, plus a really insightful video from Brett Treasure.
Ah, yeah, I saw that
And
one.
we're kind of structuring this whole chat around the practical side.
Hmm.
How does all this actually affect getting started, making that change?
Great. So let's get into these magic pill studies first. Because the research, the Reese study and the Stake Something video, they really highlight something interesting.
They do.
So imagine someone asks you, hey, would you take a pill to get better at something? Like boost your memory, sharpen your focus, or even become kinder or more self-confident?
Sounds tempting on the surface, doesn't it? Better memory, more focus.
Totally. But here's the kicker. The research showed people had very different reactions depending on what the pill improved.
Yeah, that was the fascinating part. People were generally pretty comfortable enhancing skills, memory, concentration. They saw those as like upgrades, making their existing tools better.
Right, like getting a faster processor for your brain.
Exactly. But when it came to things they felt were, core to their identity, like kindness or self-confidence,
Mm.
big resistance, huge hesitation.
How much resistance are we talking?
Well, get this. Only about 19% were willing to take a pill for more self-confidence and for kindness. Even lower, just 9%.
9. Wow. Okay, that really tells you something.
It really does.
And the researchers suggested it boils down to this concept of a fundamental identity, this feeling that we have a real, unchanging core self. And messing with those central traits like kindness feels like, well, like erasing who you are. So the big idea here is we resist changes, habits that feel like they threaten that fundamental self.
Precisely. And Brett Treasure, in that Stake Something video, he puts it really bluntly. He basically says this belief in a fixed, real self is, well, he calls it a myth, even a superstition.
Superstition, huh?
Yeah. But the point is, we cling to this idea of some unchangeable essence, and we're scared that changing these core traits would just wipe it out.
And that connects so clearly to starting new habits, doesn't it? If you've always seen yourself as, say, a night owl,
Right.
the idea of becoming this super disciplined morning person through a new routine feels like you're betraying your true nature.
Yeah. Which leads us perfectly into the next point, this idea that identity is actually much more fluid than we think.
Okay, so identity isn't set in stone?
Not at all. Think about it. Our personalities evolve constantly. Who you are today isn't exactly who you were 10 years ago.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
Long-term relationships shape you profoundly, being married for 20 years, for instance.
Uh-huh. Or your career path. Imagine being a doctor versus, say, an engineer or maybe a gardener. Those different experiences, day in and day out, they mold you.
Yeah, absolutely. The video even mentions how, like, drastically changing your social circle can shift your personality.
Right. And what's really interesting is how we usually just accept these gradual shifts. The video asks this great question. Have you ever actually thought, man, I wish I had the personality I had 10 years ago?
Huh. Probably not. Not usually, anyway.
Exactly. Most of the time, we change in ways we become comfortable with. We
Right.
adapt.
And that links straight back to habits, right? Because starting something new, like the video example of regular exercise,
Hmm.
that introduces new experiences. And those experiences literally over time rewire your brain. It stops being this external thing you do and starts becoming part of who you are.
Yes. And if you accept Brett Treasure's idea that this precious real self is maybe more of a fantasy,
Okay.
then that barrier to change, that fear, it starts to crumble. There's nothing fixed you need to protect so fiercely,
Mm.
which kind of frees you up, doesn't it? It lets you take the actions that lead to the new habit becoming part of your, well, your evolving identity.
Right, takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
So going back to the Rees study, they didn't just ask if people would take the pills. They asked why they were reluctant about certain ones. It wasn't just a vague feeling.
That's right. They dug deeper. And people gave a range of reasons. Some just didn't see the point in being better at kindness, for example.
Okay.
Others had like moral issues with artificial enhancement.
Sure.
And Some people just generally dislike taking pills for anything.
But what was the most common reason? The big one.
The big one, across the board, was that fear we keep coming back to. The fear of fundamentally changing who they are.
Wow. So that really was the core issue.
It really seems so. And what's telling is that this concern, this "I don't want to change who I fundamentally am" reason was strongest for the traits that people themselves rated as most central to their identity.
So the closer it felt to their core self.
The more they resisted the idea of changing it with a pill.
Yep. Okay, this is fascinating because it suggests how we talk about change, how we frame it, could make a real difference. The Reese study looked into this too, didn't it? This idea of advertising or framing.
Yes, exactly. How you present the change matters. It can shift how willing people are to embrace it. This leads to our second key insight. Framing matters. Framing habits as unlocking potential, not overhauling identity, seems key. So the study tested different taglines for these hypothetical drugs. One approach was like, become more than who you are, kind of an enhancement message.
Okay, aiming higher.
Right. The other was framed as, become who you are, more about enabling your true potential. They called it enhancement versus enablement.
And how did people react to those different frames?
Well, for something like concentration, which, again, people saw as less fundamental,
Right, more of a skill.
they were actually more interested when it was framed as enhancement. But for social comfort, something that feels much closer to the core self, that enhancement frame didn't land as well. People were more hesitant.
But the other frame,
The enablement frame, become who you are, that seemed to work better for the social comfort drug.
so the practical takeaway for someone wanting to start a new habit seems pretty clear then.
I think so.
Instead of thinking, I need to totally transform into this fitness fanatic, maybe frame it as, this will help me unlock the energy I know I have, or this helps me become the calmer person I want to be.
Exactly. Think of it as enabling your potential, your, let's say, evolving true self, rather than a radical break from who you are now. It just feels less threatening to that sense of self.
Yeah, less like you're fighting yourself.
Precisely. That deep fear of messing with your core self is clearly a massive roadblock for a lot of people. But understanding that identity isn't this fixed statue, that it's actually designed to change and adapt based on what we do and experience, that can be incredibly liberating.
Yeah, like giving yourself permission to evolve.
It takes off that immense pressure, that feeling like you have to achieve this monumental overnight transformation. You don't.
So if you, the listener, are feeling stuck on starting something new, maybe pause and ask, is some of this resistance really about protecting a fixed idea of who you think you are?
Yeah, it's a powerful question. Recognizing that who you are is always a work in progress might just be the thing that unlocks that first step.
Okay, so let's boil it down. After digging into all this, what's the absolute core message about getting started that we've uncovered?
Well, I think it's essentially this. That fear of losing yourself, your identity, it often blocks you from starting new positive habits. That's the barrier.
Right.
But, and this is the crucial part, the research and just observing life shows that your identity isn't fixed anyway. It's meant to be fluid. So if you can embrace that fluidity, it makes taking those first steps way easier. You're not betraying yourself because yourself is always in the process of becoming.
That's a great way to put it. And if you'd like some help navigating those first steps, maybe overcoming some of those mental blocks we talked about, you can actually get coaching on how to get started. Our sponsor, StakeSomething.com, offers this for as little as $7 a week.
Definitely worth checking out. So maybe here's a final thought to chew on.
Okay.
Think about one area, just one, in your life where you've been resisting a change you know would probably be good for you. And just ask yourself honestly, could that resistance be coming from a perceived threat to your idea of who you are, a fixed idea? Maybe letting go of that fixedness, even just a little, is the real first move.
Something to definitely reflect on. All right, bye for now.
Bye for now.